Welcome to the Nuclear Power Institute's The Path of Most Persistent podcast. The podcast highlighting individual stories of persistence, community outreach, and inspiration to support the continuing and emerging nuclear science and technology needs across the state of Texas. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you enjoyed today's podcast.
So today we have Aleshia Duncan with us. She serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the International Nuclear Energy at the U.S. Department of Energy. She manages the civil nuclear engagement and bilateral and multilateral relationships with countries across the globe. Aleshia, it's such an honor to have you here today. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation, Valerie. I really appreciate it. It is a pleasure to join you, especially since we have known each other for quite a long time.
And just for the sake of transparency for our audience, do you want to talk a little bit about how we met? And also, I should mention that today's date is May the 6th, 2021. We hope to release this interview in a month or so, or a couple of weeks, but I want to make sure just to timestamp it. So Aleshia, can you talk about when we first met?
Sure. So we have a framework called the International Framework for Nuclear Energy Cooperation. And part of what IFNEC does is provide speakers who have amazing programs throughout the world to 65 member country membership. And so we have had featured one of the programs, Power Set and other offshoots of that, WIT and others, that you were the dynamic presenter of. And so me, as working with the Secretariat of IFNEC at the time, I wondered who this dynamic lady is. And so I remember when we sort of connected with each other in the same room, because I think we both sort of felt the attraction of strong energy in women, that sort of just brings people together just like that. And so we were able to connect then. And I remember that we just sort of gushed over each other's station in life and what we were doing. And then we just stayed connected ever since, and were able to link up with each other in various places around the world, because again, the circle is a small one. And so that is how we met and then remained connected throughout times. And I remember one particular occasion at the GC, in the midst of, I think, a very noisy place. In fact, there had to be a bar 5 feet within the actual general conference. So they'd set up this little station for people to connect. And even then, with all that noise, we found a little place on the side of a couch and we talked for hours. And that's just the type of connections we have had over the years. So for me to be here with you and the team today, it really brings joy to my heart, because it amplifies just how important one connection can be and the amounts of fruit it can bear over years.
Well, I guess we could just end the interview now, because first of all, you've embarrassed me because you're just too generous with your comments, but you pretty much encapsulated everything I thought I would say. And Aleshia, because this is the Nuclear Power Institute's podcast of the Path of Most Persistence, from the very moment that I met you, that was one of the things that did attract me to your energy, is that this determination and energy it just has always captivated me. And I knew that I had to know you, and I wanted to stay close to you and just take notes all the time. And once we created this podcast, honestly, Aleshia, it was for individuals such as yourselves that has just such a rich background, and not only of experiences, personal and professional, but also just so beautifully generous with their talents, their time, and quite honestly, to share with another woman in the field And we also did connect, and I see we thought about it today too. We connected over pearls.
Yeah.
And we can talk a little bit about that too. But all the things you mentioned about me, I have to say, I'm rubber and you're glue. So bounces off of me and sticks to you, as they say in elementary school. But it is appropriate for now. But just knowing you over the years and wishing, but physically we're so far apart, and our objectives are different in our professional fields as well. But I find such joy that I can connect with you. It doesn't matter how much time has passed, and you're always so generous to connect, because I know your schedule is so very busy. But what I want our audience to know is that we're going to let you lead this conversation about persistence in whatever direction you want to go. But I know whatever that path is, it's going to be a strong and exciting one. And thank you again for being with us. And I'm so excited that we're providing a platform. I know you have many, but with our partners, to hear you and learn a little bit more about you.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love, first of all, the name of the podcast. May I say that? Love it. When I think about persistence, I think about childhood and how early on we see toddlers, even before they learn how to walk, that they are determined. They are determined no matter how many times they fall. And that, I think, is what life has to be about until the day we stop breathing, because we are going to fall. We're going to fall and hit our heads. We're going to fall and have our hearts broken. We're going to fall and feel rejected. We're going to fall. We're going to fall. We're going to fall. And like a toddler, we must continue to get back up immediately and keep moving forward. And that is what I love most about the name of the podcast. That is what I have tried to use to fuel everything that I've done, because certainly I have fallen. And I think that is the most important piece that someone in my position could share with somebody, because it's not about being any of the titles that I have had. It's not about the things that I could say are work accomplishments. It's about the engine that I have that keeps moving me forward and keeps transparency there in that. Because I think that with the advent of social media, with pretty much everything you do in life being able to be captured, filmed at a moment's notice, that sometimes many times we feel that we have to be perfect. We have to get it right. We have to show up, everything perfect. I don't even wear too much makeup, because I would be the one that would have just all of that down here. Lipstick is about all I can manage, but we have to be perfect. There's this pressure there. And for me, every dark moment, every time that I have fallen, that's really where I have learned how to be able to keep going, how to be able to create, how to be able to be resilient, how to be able to be resourceful. It hasn't been those times where I was just sailing through, looking like $1,000,000, making success after success. No, it was those times I failed. And so I think that people need to learn in their path to persistence, in their path of persistence, that you have to super leverage those dark moments. You have to super leverage every time you fall, because that is where all of the gold is. That is where the gems are. And so that's the first thing I want to share, because it's never been about any of the great parts of my life, because that didn't teach me anything. That didn't require me to do something different. So you took a note there.
So many notes. But yeah, so everything you said, so impactful. And there's so many more questions that popped into my head that I hadn't anticipated. But when you talk about super leveraging, getting up, persisting, it takes strength. Not only does it take the emotional, the spiritual type strength, but it sometimes takes physical strength.
Right.
And I know everyone has their own experiences and their own wells from which they draw. But for you, Aleshia, personally, how do you draw your strength?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I think for me, I have to think about why. Why do I want to do something? What is my why? And I think about my ancestors. And I come from a family that folks worked hard in various capacities. And they, with the very little money that they earned, were able to always have on a crisp white shirt. I remember seeing all of my uncles in crisp white shirts, shined shoes. I remember that my aunts were always dressed up as if they were going to church, but they weren't going to church. I remember that their houses were pristine, that they owned property, and they made pennies. There was always hot meals on the table. And so when I think about what they could do with limited education, limited resources, and then back then, in my grandfather's house, his brothers and sisters, there were a total of 14. So can you imagine splitting a meal that many different ways? And you're keeping all of those kids clean. I remember all of that. So when I look at a why, if they did that and did that with excellence, and I have much more resources, more money in terms of salary, more education in terms of the degrees, more experience, more opportunities. I want to do something that uses that model and expands it as much as I can. And then I look at the people who are coming behind me, and I want them to have somebody that they can look at and say, wow, if she can do this, then I can do this. So I really think that it's important. So my why is to look back and to look forward and say, there are people who are watching over me, and there are people who are looking at me. And so I've got to pull it together and keep moving.
It's really inspiring. So I appreciate that. So that leads me to one of the questions I love asking, because it's important to me and what my growth, growing up is mentorship. So, you said you look back and, these people inspired you and quote unquote, maybe a little bit of mentoring, and you look forward and try to be that role model as well. How important has mentorship been in your life, and how important is it to you personally on mentoring others?
Thank you for that question, Travis. It is extremely important. And in fact, there weren't too many points I wrote down that I wanted to hit to make sure that I hit today. And mentoring was one. I have appreciated the value of a mentor since I was a child. And I've had a few. I've happened to have had extremely great bosses, pretty much only one or two bad ones, but extremely, extremely great bosses who also served as my mentors. And a few of them still serve as my mentor today. And also in terms of being a mentor, it is part of what my purpose is in life, because I do everything I do to be able to influence betterment for somebody else. I can take care of me, but I want to use the influence that I have to be able to make conditions better, to be able to make lives better, to be able to make career development better for somebody else. And that's what really makes me happy. And so I'm actually involved in a mentoring program, which through IFNEC, I'm able to partner with the Nuclear Energy Agency, which is headed by one of my mentors, Bill Magwood, to be able to work on their mentoring program. I've been to Japan to participate in a mentoring program. We're getting ready to do another one virtually with Kenya. It's really important to me. And I have quite a few people that I mentor and have some of them for more than a decade. I think it's important. I think students need to recognize that a mentor is a very important voice for you, not only professionally, but personally, because some of the biggest mistakes that people make in their lives, they learn, I think, a decade too late, or some decades too late, or some never. So I really think it's important because a lot of things, you need to have someone who knows sort of the ways of the world and knows the ropes to tell you, hey, don't let somebody offer you something that's well beneath what you're worth. Ask them for more. Ask for the project. Go up and ask to meet with these people that you think are so super important and you don't deserve to talk to you. That's why you need a mentor, someone to advocate for you. So mentoring is extremely important for me. I have some, and I think that when you're doing it right, you'll have some until definitely you end your career, but you could have mentors in business, mentors in so many things. So I think it's something that is a lifelong process, a cycle where you have and you give back to others.
Along those lines of mentorship, you, Aleshia, have been such a strong supporter of our NPI programs since we first met. And not only was that such a huge resource for our young people, that again goes back to the generosity and energy that it takes to do that. So for our audience that does not and may not be aware of those opportunities, you've allowed for some of our students in our Power Set program that we previously had to attend that conference in Japan, if you want to talk a little bit about that. But that was hugely impressive because here are these young women from very small towns in Texas that went to another country as a guest. But what I thought, in addition to the amount of generosity that you and Director General Bill Magwood traveled to Van Vleck, Texas, a very, very small community, a rural community, to attend their SOS event. And it's usually SOS stands for us, Science on Saturday, but because you all were coming on a Wednesday, I think we adjusted that branding for that particular event. But the fact that you all traveled so far, deep into the woods, so to speak, to get to that school, it meant everything to those young people. So from your experience, can you talk about working with these young people from these very small communities and maybe something you learned about them along the way too?
Sure. So first of all, I loved going to visit the kids. I loved it. I love working with kids. And I always say if I had an infinite amount of money, I would open my own school to provide resources for underserved populations so that they could at least get a great education. I loved going to the school. And so being there and seeing, I think maybe the youngest might have been six all the way up to the seniors, and being able to actually do some experiments, see the commitment from the parents, the teachers, seeing what you had been talking about for years in person was amazing. And Bill Magwood's a pretty even-keeled person, and he had the best time. So it was just an amazing event to be there. And so when, we were going to planning to go to Japan to do the mentoring workshop, and just for clarity, I worked at the NEA at that time. So I was actually working for Bill Magwood and living in France. And they had done a few of these mentoring workshops. I said, I think we should add a different element to this. I think we should take some high school kids to Japan. And I'd lived in Japan myself already for 3 years. So I was very familiar with the culture, the kids, how much they loved everything American. So I said, if we take some kids over there, there will be a connection that having older people who want to talk about their jobs just won't be able to make. So let's take some kids over there to connect. And so, of course, nobody ever has any money to do anything. And I said, I can find them. They said, who's going to pay for this? That's a great idea, ma'am. Who's going to pay? I said, I'll find the money. And again, that's where network comes in. I started making calls, and we were able to finance those young ladies' trips to Japan, and also make sure that they had a proper chaperone, so that nobody would have to worry about their child being over in Japan who might not have ever traveled before. And Tim Powell was very instrumental in that. And so to take those kids over, one of them even had come from my visit to Texas A&M. To take those kids over was amazing. So we had high school students and one college student, and some of them weren't sure what their careers were going to be, and some had never traveled, and some had, and some didn't know each other, and just you would not have known that at the end of the trip. And we continued those relationships on. And what I learned from them were a few things. One, it reminded me of myself being from the inner city, the poorest part of Washington, D.C., where at times the median family income has been $40,000 a year. And some of those kids coming from families with situations that they might not have had a lot of money either. But to see what that really means in the world, which is nothing, because it doesn't matter where you come from. And to look at those kids and their curiosity, their strength, their ability to connect with a completely different culture, it reaffirmed hope in our young people, that they still have some of the intrinsic values that I'm sure they learned in their family, because they didn't go and have stereotypes or anything like that about what food they would try, because we ate Japanese food, whether there would be a language barrier, whether there would be commonalities and what people at their age are thinking about, all of those things. Japanese girls love basketball, Japanese girls love music, Japanese girls have boy problems. So it's all, so much connectivity. So what I learned from those kids is just really the power of knowing that who you are is within, and that you can take that and translate that regardless of where you go and regardless of what you have experienced in the past. You didn't have to come from a family that had traveled the world or had been to college or that had a lot of money or any of that. So just seeing that, was so refreshing. And I love those kids. I love them. So I am still in contact with them. We have a reunion virtually. If they need something like a college recommendation or whatever, or have questions about whether they still want to major in this, or whether they're interested in nuclear engineering or changing together, we still have those conversations. And it's just amazing, because when we go back to Japan again, guess what? I'm taking some girls, because I think the student element from the US perspective is so important. And so I was able to sort of shift that dynamic a bit, because it had been done one way, but I thought it was important to do it another way. And not only for the Japanese girls, but for our US girls as well, to be able to bring that together, because living in Japan was life-changing, and I wanted to share that with as many people as possible.
Thank you so much, Aleshia. just to circle back for our audience, if you mentioned, or we mentioned, Bill Magwood, who is the Director General of the Nuclear Energy Agency that is located in Paris, France, correct?
Yes.
And you also mentioned Tim Powell, who is the CEO at the South Texas Nuclear Operating Project in Matagorda County. And just to give a little extra information about Tim Powell, he's been a long time supporter of NPI programs. When Tim Powell and I first became aware of each other, he was the school board president for Bay City ISD, and I was a high school principal. And he was listening to an interview that I was giving at one of our playoff games, and our mascot didn't show up. The child that goes into the uniform didn't show up, and it was a playoff game. So being a principal, I did it. No one knew who this energetic shark was, but I told myself, my motto in life, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right. So the shark was doing splits and cartwheels and things that had never been done before. And when I was unmasked after the game, to everyone's shock and horror, I don't know. Tim, and again, I didn't know Tim at the time, but he got such a kick out of a principal doing that. And we worked very hard to find each other. And then luckily, I had the good fortune of meeting him in a more structured way through NPI. And because he was not only the CEO or eventually the CEO at STP, but having that important role on the school board, he had a true understanding of the needs for these types of programs. Mm-hmm. So you're right. As far as making those connections, the networking, having Tim as part of that group has been phenomenal.
Yeah, and he's a father, so I know he really got it because he has, a daughter as well.
I think he has 8 daughters and 1 son. I think.
Yeah.
Yes, he's impressive. And I will say too, going back, just to reaffirm what you're saying, Aleshia, the fact that, again, our students were able to engage in an international way, not only did it bring that perspective and networking in play, but I think especially too, as U.S. citizens, that we were sometimes so isolated because of, geographically speaking, I think that it's so rewarding when our students do travel because they get a perspective that perhaps they wouldn't otherwise. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. And that mentorship and guidance from you and what you continue to provide is hugely impactful, which I guess at this time it would probably be really...
May I jump in one more moment?
Yes.
What I did not say is when I decided that I wanted to take some young female students with me, you were the first person I called. And I said, I need your help. I want to do this. Who will help me in terms of you being able to help say, this lady can take your kids overseas. And so you were the person I called. And so you played a key role in that. And you helped us get all of this done. And so we were able to take those students because of you, because I called you to get the students. So I don't want us to miss that key point. So thank you.
I'm humbled. Thank you very much for that. But again, networking, doing things that we should for each other, just out of not only professional courtesy, but just doing good work and doing the best we can for each other, not only because we are women, professional women, underrepresented women. It goes beyond that. Just, it's so important that we lead by example, Aleshia, all the things that you've been talking to. But if we want our students to do more, be more, have more, we have to open those doors for them. So again, it takes all of us.
And I think it's also important that women support each other because, that mean girl mentality has been around way too long, and we're not in competition with each other. And the earlier that not only women, that people understand that I'm not in competition with anybody but myself.
Yes.
So whatever I do with you, I can help support you, be happy for you, clap with you, leverage what you're doing, and echo and amplify that in my own life. It doesn't take anything away from me. It just allows two people to try to do something like drum up some young ladies to take to Japan and let their mothers be okay with it, instead of one person trying to do that all on her own. And so I think that we have to really recognize that synergy that can happen. And women, particularly because of the mean girl syndrome, because men, they don't seem to have these issues too much, but they can meet in a 7-Eleven and then talk for 3 hours about sports and become best friends. We're too busy like, what does she have on? Who is she? What is she doing? I don't know. So I think there's really an opportunity for us to really to help each other. And I know that this podcast, just the intention of it, really amplifies that, because, we came together because this is something that would work for both of us to be able to share a message.
Well, I mean, you just said everything. So everything you said, just I'm going to put out, exclamation points behind that. And before we go, I know we need to start wrapping up, or thinking about wrapping up pretty soon, but I need to circle back because you've said so many amazing things. There's so many golden nuggets that you were just leaving a trail back to you. So we're going to have another conversation later for sure. But when I previously asked you about from where you draw your strength, you said your ancestry. Okay. These are some of the things that, we share in common, and I think a lot of our audience can. But one thing I really want to pull out from all of that is the fact that you talked about not having a lot, but doing a lot with what you have, basically. Those pristine moments. Is it the pristine shirt, the pristine house, the pristine attempt to put yourself in that best place? And that resonates so much with me, Aleshia, and perhaps, and I don't know if we've ever shared this, but you talked about the 14 children. Well, I don't know if you recall, but I'm the 12th of 13. So I totally get the mentality there. But one of those commonalities too, is that was always something that my mother impressed upon us, that she wanted her children. It didn't matter if we were going to church, if we were going to the store. By golly, my ponytail was going to be high and tight. And I was going to have on my little matching bloomers with my, little dress. And we were all of her 13 little ducklings were going to be just precious. We were going to be clean and on point all the time, because she took such pride. She wanted everyone to know that was her job. She did it with love, care, and intention. And I think so much, and it's, the fashion and the culture of things, that things are very casual and laid back. But one of that attention to detail has stayed with me on my professional side as well. As a high school principal and things like that, I would really call upon our students. I say children, our students, to take pride in our campus. Keep things clean. You see a piece of trash, let's pick it up. Look your best. And it's not about having the best, but it's doing the best with what you have. And because I think that sometimes is internalized. Once you see things that people have intention of trying to keep things nice and neat and clean, that they internalize that and they start feeling better and taking pride and ownership. But I think for our young people that might be listening and might not really appreciate, sometimes they hear adults talking about, putting yourself together, tucking in your shirt, or brushing back your hair, or coming together with intention. I think I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that. Because again, it's not about having the best, but it's about doing the best. Because not only are those messages going out into the world, they're also feeding a loop within ourselves, I think. So can you talk about, your ancestry in that way about the pristine, the intention of presenting to the world?
Sure. I appreciate that question. I think just in terms of my grandmother, my grandfather, and so even they were very different people. My grandmother was a quiet, stylish, faith-filled woman with an immaculate home, and all of that. And my grandfather, I think we get all of our charisma from him and his side because he was well known, life of the party. All the women loved this green-eyed, tall man. And he had multiple brothers, some with blue eyes. And so all of them were just these gorgeous, know everybody human beings, but they still always looked good. So I got it from both sides, just the importance of how you present yourself, not only what you have on, but when you look someone in the eye, when you shake their hand, when you introduce yourself, when you say your own name. And so I think that when people today, our young people today, and again, it's not just the young people, because there's some adults who don't get it. When someone sees you for the first time, they're not looking at, oh, does he have on this expensive shirt? Or does he have on these expensive pants or this expensive handbag? Are they clean? Just basic things. Do they take care of their teeth, their clothes? Are their clothes clean? Are their nails clean? Underneath, things like that, very basic things we were taught. And then when they shake my hand, am I holding a little fish, or am I speaking and shaking with someone who operates with strength and conviction? And so those were the things that my grandparents taught me as a kid. As a kid, when you shake someone's hand, say your name with strength and clarity and shake their hand and look them in the eye. And so that's the same way I raised my sons. And I think that, again, social media, while social media has some great benefits, I think that it has really brainwashed a lot of people that says you have to have this and you haven't made it until you have that. Well, let me tell you something. The likes of a Bill Gates has plenty of money. What do we see him dressed in all the time? So it's not about what you put on your body. It's the way you present yourself, the way you wear it. Because I can wear a t-shirt and jeans and go stand in front of a crowd of thousands of people and give the same impactful remarks that I have if I went to go spend my money on a Chanel suit and said something. And then there are people who have on Chanel suits and are saying nothing. So I don't want people to be brainwashed by that. I know it looks nice and you may aspire to that, and that's great. But what you have inside reflects on everything you do outside, because trust me, when I see someone walking towards me in a crisp white shirt, I'm not looking to see who made that shirt. I'm looking at the confidence in which they're approaching me, and I'm excited to know what they're going to say. And I hope that that's one thing that people can take from this, is because we have spent so much of our energy on this that it's led to a lot of dark feelings, behaviors, inadequacies, et cetera, because people were trying to attain something and doing anything they could to attain it instead of working on the inside. Because you can't dress up your character. It's going to be what it's going to be. And so that if you dress from within, then I think that you're going to strike gold every time, whether the outfit costs $30 or $30,000.
Well said. And I will ask you too, since you mentioned your grandmother, and I see we have something in common. Will you speak to that item you have around your neck, ma'am?
Sure. And I hope that I can do that without tears.
It's okay. Tears are just another sign of strength, ma'am. So we're okay.
She went on the podcast and cried. That's what they're going to type in the little comments. So my grandmother, if folks don't already know, I just consider her to be an amazing woman. And what the most amazing thing about her is that she loved me unconditionally, a very simple thing. She loved me unconditionally. And she had the most influence over me of anyone who walked the earth, because she, as I mentioned, she was very faith-filled. And as a young person growing up, I wasn't exactly within those little guardrails. So she would oftentimes not agree with the choices that I'd made. And she would give me the most gentle correction, but firm about what she thought. And, she would often talk to me about forgiveness, about being a good neighbor, about making sure that we kept family together, and also about having great credit. That pretty much sums up everything my grandmother used to preach to me. And so I have a set of pearls. These are hers. And so I've traveled the world, and I've taken these pearls everywhere I've been. My grandmother gets to go with me because she was such a huge influence in everything that I did right. I won't say she had a hand in all those things I did wrong, but the things I did right was a result of her guidance, her prayers, her tenacity, and her just continuing to be consistent in her messaging, even when I wasn't listening. And so I'm so grateful to her. And I wanted her to always share great moments with me. So that's why she travels. These pearls travel with me in my carry-on luggage, so that I can share another great moment with her. And so that's why, because this, in fact, is a great moment, I wanted to make sure that she shares this moment with me as well. And thank you for the opportunity to honor her.
Listen, you've shared that story about your grandmother with me a while back, and it's so touching and so moving. And I hope you know that I'm not only wearing these pearls for you, but to honor your grandmother. And it is so important for those that we love and honor that have gone before us to continue their stories, share their stories. But I also want you to say her name, Aleshia. Can you say her name? Because the power of saying our loved ones' names, I think, is extremely powerful. So do you mind sharing her name with us?
Don't mind. I just hope there are no more tears. Her name was Ella Higgins Davis Hall, because she had two husbands. So she was born Ella Higgins, the daughter of Alfred Higgins.
So I want to say to Ella Higgins Davis Hall, thank you. Thank you, Ella. Thank you for the traditions that you passed on to your family, and that making the way for this lovely, wonderful individual, Aleshia. We honor you today.
Thank you so much. And I know those young ladies in Power Set were wearing pearls as well. And thanks to one Madame Valerie, I think it's just something about the story. And I know that you've taught all of the young ladies how pearls are formed. And when we think about the path of most persistence and the little specks of dirt that get stuck, and how they one day become a pearl. Again, going back to you don't have to be perfect. So we've really had a full circle conversation. You're going to have flaws. You're going to fail. But there is not too many things. There are not too many things that are more beautiful than pearls, more elegant than pearls. And so I appreciate that you started that with the young ladies, because any of the young ladies that I've mentored, I always tell them, show up to your interview with pearls. Even if you're 18 or 19, you show up with a good pair of pearls, and they're going to go, okay, Miss Thing, what do you, So I think it's a great thing to start the young ladies with.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well,
And
I did not think we could have a conversation without tears. So I am fully happy that we did not disappoint ourselves.
and as we begin to close out, I want to give my teammates an opportunity to ask any questions that they have. But as they are coming up with questions, I want you to think about your closing comments too. And if there's anything that we neglected to ask you about that you'd like to speak on. So team.
Let me start with one thing. And first, again, Aleshia, thank you very much for doing this with us. And I was seriously sitting here thinking to myself, I did not want to interrupt this conversation because it was very powerful between the things that you were saying together. I'll take it back to one thing that you said early on about amplifying connections. And you gave multiple examples, but to look at what we've done the last couple of years as we're trying to amplify these programs with the high schools to more and more and more people across the state of Texas, we're going to be pushing this conversation in front of a lot of young people. Mm-hmm. And so as we look at this network of young people, I was curious, you've hinted at it, you've said a lot of different things, and I really appreciate the fire in your eyes and the passion in your voice as you're talking about these things. But in the concept of persistence, as you went from a young woman in DC through all the different things to get to where you are now, I was curious if there were any particular good examples of a case where something, whether it was socially or personally or professionally, was telling you no, and you didn't accept that as an answer and you said, no, I'm going to do this anyway, or somehow you pushed past that barrier.
Certainly. I appreciate that question. And the thing that immediately came to mind is when the opportunity for me to go take my first ever assignment overseas. And so there was an opportunity which we had to apply for in Tokyo, Japan, and another in Vienna, Austria. So they both came open at the same time. And I applied for both with Austria as my preference because there were more English speakers. There was a shorter time difference. And I thought that I might blend in better. I figured if I go to Japan, I would just stand out a mile away. And I don't speak Japanese and had never been to Japan. And so I applied for both and got selected to go to Japan. So I was offered the position and I said, okay, let me take a week to think about it and I'll get back to you. And so I had to have a very hard conversation with my grandmother who was terminally ill. So I knew if I left, she would pass while I was living overseas. And I had been her primary provider of all of her medical needs. So I would take her to all of the doctor's appointments multiple times a week. And so I had to have this conversation with her and say, Grandma, I'm moving, going overseas, and I will be there for 3 years. And she said, why? And she couldn't even say a lot of words anymore at that time. Her word usage was down to 1. And I said, Grandma, I have to do this because the opportunity is here now. I tried to get them to let me wait 2 years, but they said, you have to go now since you've been selected. So I checked that box. And then I figured out, all right, I have sons. And that movie was out with the kid who had a parent, which I can't think of the name of right now. And they actually moved to Japan. And I know in a remake of it, maybe Will Smith's son played the little kid. And so I had 2 sons, one who would be starting college, so he wasn't an issue, but the other one's still in high school. What is he going to think about this? And he was at a time in his life where he was really struggling and he didn't want to go. So now I have a son that doesn't want to go. And then at work, so I went on and said, yes. I said, yes, I'll do it. And then each of the people in my chain of command said to my face, they picked the wrong person. They said they picked the wrong person. They should have sent you to Vienna because it's more policy oriented, and sent the technical person that they picked for Vienna to Japan. And I sat there and I listened and I smiled. I didn't refute. I didn't respond. I just smiled. So at least 4 different people told me I was the wrong person for the job, but I persevered anyway. And as everyone is aware, there was a nuclear accident during the time that I was posted over there. And we went on to work with the crisis management and all of that involved from the embassy. And it was the most remarkable, impactful experience of both my professional and personal life. But I said yes, because my motto is say yes and figure out the rest. Don't worry about if you don't have the money. Don't worry about what else you need to do what the opportunity says. I've had young people who got opportunities to go to an internship at Goldman Sachs who couldn't even afford to go live and pay for housing there. I said, tell them yes, we'll figure out the money. So I think it's super important that our young people know, say yes and figure out the rest.
That's a great, great story. Thank you.
I don't have another question, but I just wanted to thank you so much for your thoughts and time, your perspective and experience. It's been really amazing hearing all the different stories that you've had to tell, and all the advice that you've given. And like Dr. Segovia said, all the hundreds of nuggets that I now have to decide which one to use in the description. So thank you for making that a little bit harder. But it's really, that's a good problem, right? So thank you.
Thank you, Travis. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to see your production skills.
Don't get too excited, okay?
Travis, don't be humble. You're awesome. So we have an amazing team. But, oh, Aleshia. So just as we close out today, I just must say to you, my dear colleague, my friend, and my sister, thank you so much. Thank you for always coming from a place of yes. Thank you for being bold and brave and beautiful in the physical sense, of course, but more importantly, in your spirit and in your works. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for sure, without a doubt, you have surpassed by far the goal of our path of most persistence. Not only will you illuminate the paths of all of our audience, but I think I can speak for our team on the screen that you have given us such light today. And we're going to carry that with us in our work and our mission. And we appreciate you, and we're grateful for you for not only your time today, but your continued support in our work. So please know that we are here to be a good partner and colleague to you as well. So if there is ever a need, you call upon us, and we will make it happen because we will say yes to you.
Thank you so much, and I know that you mean every single word that you said. I so appreciate your partnership. I so appreciate your friendship. I so appreciate the sisterhood that we have established. It has been an honor and a pleasure and fun to sit with you all today. And so I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I have a very demanding job, but I love the fact that every once in a while I get to do a cool thing. And so this was definitely a cool thing for me to be able to do. And I'm honored, and I can't wait to be able to share this with our partners all around the world. And you asked me what the one thing is I might want to say at the end. And I don't know that I said this word during the entire podcast, but it is fearless, fearless. One of the gifts that I had, even as a child, is being fearless. And I think that that's one of the things that can carry someone very far. So I would encourage our young people, our students, even those of us who I can call seasoned and experienced, Be fearless. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. More importantly, don't be afraid to stand up for other people who cannot stand up for themselves. Be fearless.
Well, on that, we're going to go fearless into the future. And until we visit you again, I will be holding my pearls dear to me, thinking of you and your grandmother. And I just want to, again, encourage our audience to listen to not only this amazing conversation that we had with our dear friend, Aleshia Duncan, but to all the other podcasts that we have and all the wonderful guests that we have on all of our platforms. We'll be sharing on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of the places. And hopefully Aleshia will be able to do the same, because people need to hear her voice and all the other persistent folks out there. So until our next visit, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. The Nuclear Power Institute is a joint center with Texas A&M University and the Texas A&M Engineering Experiment Station, and is a component of the Nuclear Engineering and Science Center. For more information about our center or about our guest speaker today, please visit our website at npi.tamu.edu and look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you.